bucka. Ha. You know the deal.
Before we talk about word problems involving coins, let's just talk a little bit about how we calculate how much money we have based on the number of coins we have. So, for example, here I've written just a sentence where suppose we had 3 quarters and 8 dimes. If I wanted to calculate how much money that was, well, what we would have to do is multiply 3, or the number of quarters, times 25 cents, because a quarter is 25 cents. And to calculate how much money we have in dimes, I'd have to multiply 8 times 10, because a dime is worth 10 cents. Now, you'll notice that I've written 25 cents as 25 instead of 0.25, and 10 cents as 10 instead of 0.10. I'm purposely avoiding the decimals here, and I'll talk a little bit more about why that is later. So when I want to calculate how much money I have in total here, I would, of course, add these two amounts together. So if I have 3 quarters, I multiply 3 times 25, and that's 75 cents. And if I have 8 dimes, then that's 8 times 10. So all together there I have 80 cents. And then if I add those two amounts together, I have 155 cents. Now, if we have 155 cents, another way to write that is $1.55. So when we have a word problem that involves coins, usually we're going to be given at least 2 pieces of information. So here I've written a problem involving a coin collection. And here our coin collection has a total of $25, and we're told one other piece of information. There are 3 times as many nickels as dimes. So again, with the word problem involving coins, you're always going to be given 2 pieces of information. One piece of information will involve how much money we have. The other piece of information will involve how many coins we have. And that's what we have here. So when we're writing our let statement, our opening statement, we're always going to be looking at the piece of information that involves how many coins we have. And when we're coming up with our let statement, the first thing we're going to do is assign a variable to one of the unknowns here. And usually what you want to ask yourself is, well, if I could know one of these, if I could know the number of nickels or the number of dimes, which one would I want to know? And I would say in this case, I would want to know the number of dimes, because if I knew the number of dimes, I could multiply it times 3, and then that would tell me the number of nickels. So whatever piece of information we want to know first, that's the piece of information we're going to let. So we would say something like, let X represent number of dimes. In grade 9, we avoid using 2 variables, even if we have 2 unknowns. We have to mathematically relate the first unknown to the second unknown. So here we've called the number of dimes X, and we know that the number of nickels is 3 times that amount. So whatever number of dimes I have, I would multiply it by 3 to get the number of nickels. Well, since X is the number of dimes, we can then say that means that 3x, or 3 times x, equals the number of nickels. So there's our opening statement. And again, we got that opening statement from the information that involved how many coins we have. The next step in solving this is to write our equation. And to write our equation now, we're going to use how much money we actually have. And this is where we go back to this example here, where we talked about how to calculate how much money we have if we know how many coins we have. In this question, we don't know the number of dimes we have, so we called it X. Well, if X is the number of dimes, to calculate how much money I have in dimes, I would have to multiply that value by 10. So in other words, to get how much money I have in dimes, it would be 10 times X, or 10x. Similarly, with the number of nickels, to calculate how much money I have in nickels, well, I would have to multiply that by 5. 5 times the number of nickels will tell me how much money I have in nickels. In this case, the number of nickels is called 3x, so the amount of money that we have in nickels is 5 times 3. Well, now that we know how much money we have in dimes and how much money we have in nickels, we can write an equation using the fact that we have $25. Now, again here, you'll notice that I've written 10 cents as 10 instead of 0.10, and I've written 5 cents as 5 instead of 0.05. Most of the time I try to avoid using decimals if possible because they tend to just confuse students. And the nice thing here is we can avoid using decimals. The only thing that we have to be aware of is when we're actually calculating this amount, we're calculating how many cents we have. Just like with this example here, when we multiplied 3, the number of quarters, times 25, that gave us how many cents we have. And 8 times 10, the number of dimes times 10, that again gave us how many cents we had, and when we added it together, it calculated how many cents we had, which is 155 cents. Well, for this question, I know I have $25. If I'm going to calculate this in terms of how many cents I have to write that in cents. Well, $25 would mean 2,500 cents, or 2,500 cents. Well, here's the amount of money that I have in dimes. This is the amount of money that I have in nickels, and this is the total amount of money I have. To get the total, we would add the two amounts, and we would know it would have to equal 2,500. So now we have our equation. 10x plus 5 times 3x equals 2,500. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and solve the equation. If we have any math that we can do in an equation, if there's any simplifying we can do, we should do that simplifying first. So the first thing we can do here is multiply 5 times 3x. And so 5 times 3x would give us 15x. So the next line of our solution is 10x plus 15x equals 2,500. We still have a little bit of simplifying we can do here because we have some like terms. We can add 10x plus 15x, and that'll give us 25x. Well, that's as much simplifying as we can do, so now we need to go about isolating the variable. And what we have to get rid of here is times 25. To get rid of times 25, we're going to go ahead and divide by 25. And if we divide the left side by 25, we also have to divide the right side by 25. Now again, we've got some simplifying we can do. Multiplying by 25 and dividing by 25 cancels itself out, essentially makes 1. 1x is the same as x, and 2,500 divided by 25 is 100. So what does that tell us? Well, we need to go back to our original question here, which showed us in our original statement that x represented the number of dimes. Well, we've solved what x is. X is 100, so if we were to translate this back into English, we could say the number of dimes is 100. Well, you'll notice the question asks how many coins of each kind are there. So we not only have to say how many dimes there are, we also have to say how many nickels there are. And we're told here that we have 3 times as many nickels as dimes, so therefore the number of nickels has to be 300, because 3 times 100 is 300. We can also check to see if our answer is right by substituting these values into this equation. So if we multiply 10 times 100 and 5 times 300, that's going to give us 1,000 plus 1,500, which does equal 2,500. 2,500 cents means $2,500. And we can see that the left side does end up equaling the right side. So like most algebraic equations, the nice thing is you can always check to see if your answer is correct.